Hello and welcome. My name's Matt Hazeldine from Lymphoedema United. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our very first guest for our series of videos called Meet the Experts that we feature on our Lymphoedema United website. The purpose really of these videos is to obtain trusted information and invaluable guidance on how to help us to live better with lymphedema. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Garry Cooper-Stanton, Doctoral Researcher, MSc, BSc, Clinical Nurse Specialist, Lymphedema, and Queen's Nurse. My goodness, I got that all out in one go. Now, Garry is currently undertaking his PhD with a focus upon men diagnosed with non-cancer related lymphedema. So that's going to be the subject for today, Garry. So welcome, Garry. Lovely to have you on board. Thank you. And first question, if I can kick off, to tell us, if you wouldn't mind, about the nature of your research and what was your reason for choosing this subject?
No, and thank you for that introduction, and certainly the qualifications do go on forever in that sense. The area that I'm focusing on, just so that people are aware of, followed on from what you just said, I'm focusing on men diagnosed with non-cancer related lymphedema. So that could be people with what's classed as primary lymphedema that may be related to different reasons such as genetics. It may be related to non-cancer related such as secondary factors, meaning somebody may have suffered some trauma or surgery that's led to them developing the condition but not related to cancer. So with that, that's the area I'm focusing on. With that, it's men itself. And the reason why I wanted to focus on men specifically was from my own clinical experience of men coming in to my clinic to be seen, assessed and diagnosed, that the way that they interacted with the condition, its management as a long-term condition, seemed very different from the way that women may engage with it. And with that, I wanted to explore that in more detail, because when you look at some of the figures, you know, men do make up 20% of the caseload, but they don't always represent 20% of the research going on out there around lymphedema and certainly around the experiences. So that's what led me to being interested in this, and it built on my previous qualification and research in my master's, where I looked at prevalence in the West Midlands and the Southwest. So it's just fulfilling and going on with my continued interest in lymphedema, but looking at it from a very different perspective by looking at men, their experiences, and thinking, actually, are we providing the best support for them?
Okay, so just picking up on something you said there, which was really interesting. I've pretty much made my story public now about hiding under a bushel for many years, you know, hiding the lymphedema and being, you know, low self-esteem, low confidence, and then the sort of turning point where I thought, right, enough's enough. Now I need to start kicking myself up the backside and having a positive attitude. You mentioned that the behavior of men in clinic was different to women. Can you just expand on that for me?
Oh no, certainly in that side of things. I would say that the men themselves, depending on where they are in their condition, meaning duration, they tend not to talk about the implications of that condition upon them, you know, in their daily lives. So with that, they keep it quite bottled up, really. If they are having problems, they're not sharing it with me. Or if they do, it's reached a stage whereby they're not able to control it or understand what to do. But that takes a lot of courage for them to then share that with me. Usually that comes much later on. So compared to, say, some of the women that come in the clinic, they will talk to me quite freely about how they're feeling, how it's impacting upon them, their relationships quite clearly. And with that, the men in my clinic won't do that. It's very rarely that they will say something. And I think if they do, it's because they've developed quite a decent relationship with me as a clinician and a support, that they will reveal that side to me without any fear of judgment or any other considerations, because it is quite challenging for men, men in general and men in society, about opening up, talking about things, feeling like that hasn't hindered them or made them more vulnerable.
It's a really interesting point, Gary, because I've had female clinicians, and I've worked with Mark Pearson at St George's closely over the years as his patient. And oddly enough, looking back, actually, I'm a bit more open with Mark, and I tend to tell it as it is, man to man, and probably my guard goes up a little bit, and trying to hide a lot of the mental struggles that you have, as well as the physical ones with the female clinicians. That's a really important point, and I know this for a fact. One of my objectives with Lymphoedema United is to get men talking. So, you know, when we first met, and I heard about your research, it absolutely fitted like hand in glove, and I was thrilled to take part in that research. And I can honestly say to our audience listening, it certainly got me talking more than I think I've ever done for a free of charge shrink session. So thank you for that, Gary. So tell me, what's the criteria for the people that you need for your research? And if you could just give us a bit more of a background as to what is involved in the research that you've been doing.
No, that's absolutely fine in that sense. And I'm glad you had a positive experience from being part of my research really as well. So for other people to know who I'm looking for as the participants recruitment, it is men over the age of 18. So they have to be classed as an adult to be able to give consent. They have to have a diagnosis that is non-cancer related in that side of things. They have to reside in the United Kingdom, or Republic of Ireland is fine in terms of, because it's about similarities in terms of when we look at support services and also culturally as well. So that's the reason why I'm focusing just in the UK and Republic of Ireland. So that's what I'm after in those terms, as simple as that. And also that they can speak to me in English in that side of things. So again, communicate. Unfortunately, I don't know any other languages, so I can't communicate any other way in that sense. But with that, what's involved in the study, and again, if there's any questions about recruitment and everything, so they can email me, and that's equally willing to be shared. They can go into what I class as the stage 1, which is an online survey that they complete. Very straightforward. It can be completed on the phone. It can be completed on the desktop. It asks for details such as name, address, email. It's a video of me explaining what the study's like. It's only a 2 to 3 minute video explaining it. Go through the consent form. Then it asks key questions around what is your quality of life. And also a free text to say, you gave it 4. Why did you give it a 4? And that free text is actually the most important part, because the numbers only tell me so much, but what I really want is to understand that, and that's where the free text comes in. You don't have to write War and Peace. It has to be specifically what you're feeling, your thoughts around that, because when I pull it all together, which I have done so far, there's a beautiful story around that in terms of when it illustrates. So that's stage 1. You may say, I want to be part of stage 2 at that point. You then go further forward, and then I send you what's classed as a solicited diary or a journal. And all that is to say, okay, during a 2-week period, I want you to tell me and document your thoughts and feelings when something comes up around your lymphedema that makes you think about it. So it could be that you can document every day for the 2 weeks, maybe alternate days, it may be summarizing the week, or it may be situations that suddenly happen make you think about it. So it might be you're out shopping, for example, something happens and it makes you think about your condition. And what I'm interested in is in that daily activity that you're doing, what's led to you thinking about it? What's your thoughts and feelings around that? And that starts to build that story up even further. Because the final bit is you come and have an interview with me, and we do it like here on Zoom online. So geographical locations, not a problem at all. As long as you've got a good internet access, we can do that. We set things up. I talk through what it's like, and I ask you key specific questions. Expand on what you've already said in your survey, your diary. But with that final one, I'm really interested to understand how is the condition affecting you as a man. And with that, the interview can last between 30 minutes or 60 minutes or slightly more than that. And it just really depends on how much you want to share. I will certainly pick up on things like you have, going, Gary, that's an interesting point. Can I expand on that? And I do exactly the same there, because the words we use are very important. And sometimes what I want to do is explore, okay, you've just said, what does that actually mean? It's recorded, I transcribe it, I look for all sorts of things, and that's part of the analysis. So yeah, men diagnosed with non-cancer related lymphedema over the age of 18, living in the UK and Republic of Ireland, and they can participate in stage 1, the survey, and then go into the diary, and then into the...
I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work that you've undertaken, Gary, and I have to applaud you, having gone through that process with you myself, and then multiply that by the number of people you must be talking to. I don't know how you fit that in alongside your full-time job, but so, you know, hats off to you with that one. But picking up on the point you make about the diary and living with lymphedema, when I got to that point, I thought, well, every day is more or less the same. You go through the same skincare, the compression, you know, you make sure you do your movement, etc. But actually, speaking to somebody this morning on a Zoom call, and he said every single day he has lymphedema at the forefront of his mind. You know, what's the weather doing? What clothes should he wear? You know, remembering not to get it knocked and scratched, etc. You know, so many different components that you have to think about, which I got into the habit of taking for granted. But it's not not until you stop and think, actually, today I was in a really bad mood because, you know, I couldn't get into that pair of jeans that I liked, or whatever the case may be. And it was that diarying of that, or the process of diarying it, that was quite illuminating, that actually no 2 days are really the same with lymphedema. So it was an eye-opener for me, for definite. So you must have done a ton of these so far. What are your key learning outcomes at the moment?
And certainly with that, I do agree. I think each of the diaries have been different in different ways. The tone in the diaries have also been very different, depending on the day. Some days more positive, some days a bit more, I don't want to use the word negative, just simply more reflective, if we wish to use that side of things. I would say some of the learning that's come already from this is the fact that actually there's a lot going on behind the face of the man, in terms of what they put out there versus their internal thoughts. And I think it's about how we take that understanding and start to provide support that is more tailored to what they may go through and more acceptable to what they're going through. I think trying to take what we do for, say, some of our female patients and apply it to our men won't work in that way. And I think that's one learning point, which is tailoring support already to address some of those psychological and social things that men are happen to be going through. So that's one thing. The other things are, it's about the way that we talk around treatment and management options, in terms of making it more relevant to men and how they're perceiving it. That way, seeing it as a mechanism that supports them rather than takes away from them. So those are a couple of the learning points. There's certainly a lot more around it, especially when you total up the words that people have said, and it can be as much as up to 90,000 words that somebody can say in an interview, and then trying to analyse that. So there's all sorts of different bits that have come through, and the analysis isn't finalised yet. So those are some of my top 2 already that I'm thinking. How that actually works, I've yet to kind of finalise in my own thoughts, let alone consult others.
Sure. So do you have a time scale in mind, Gary, for when this exercise draws to a close? Because obviously it's linked to your PhD, isn't it?
Yeah, it's meant to be 6 years of study. I'm in year 3.
Right.
Hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, it may be that some of my work is being published, say, this time next year. To work that through again, it just depends on any more people that come online and how I analyse that with me and my supervisors. Because I think studying a PhD, I have my supervisors, which are people like some professors and doctors in the area. And what they try to do, like always, is to try and ensure that how I'm interpreting things aligns that they have a view in it, because again, it adds that different perspective about how we look at things. They certainly made me look at things from a different theory perspective on the subject, and actually that's been hugely beneficial. And they're also not nurses in the area, they're social scientists, so they give a very different perspective, but a very valid, important perspective on it.
Interesting. So this is a bit of a curveball question. Having listened or read the thoughts of us men living with lymphedema, would there be any particular nuggets of advice or guidance that you could share with us to use the words of a good book, I know, to help us to live better with lymphedema?
No, I think men are not very good at saying that they want support, and I think for them, what they have to find is the one person, and I would say the one person at the moment that they trust, that they feel that they could let their guard down and actually share their experiences. I would say that's the biggest nugget. You don't have to share it with everybody. A support group may not be what some people want, and that can go across the board. But I do think what men sometimes lack is an ability for someone to go to, and sometimes what they want to talk to is another man. May have the same condition potentially, or a friend that can certainly understand what it's like, especially if they've engaged in sport previously and they feel they can't do it anymore, or they feel that they're going to harm themselves. I think it's finding someone they trust. As I say, it could be male and female, but I think sometimes what some men want is just to be able to connect with another man, either with the condition, or at least could understand it from their perspective.
I totally agree. And of course, you were with us at the Charity Golf Day in June. And a number of the men and the ladies who played and attended stayed the night before and stayed the night of the golf day to give them the opportunity to meet with others in a similar situation with lymphedema, either in their arm or in their legs, and just talk openly around the bar, you know, or at dinner or at breakfast about their condition, and swapping tips and just being with like-minded people. And for me, that was the key takeaway of that event. It wasn't the golf, it was about people talking to each other and meeting. And I know for a fact that some of these friendships are going to be lifetime long, as the condition is. And a couple of them already, you know, met up subsequently, as you know, one's having a stay over on their way down on holiday with a couple that they met at the golf day, which is fantastic. And you know, the more people, and I know it's corny, but the more people we can unite with lymphedema, the better. And you know, thank you again for the work that you've done to support Lymphoedema United. It's fantastic. So tell me, Garry, last question, because I've grilled you for long enough. Are you still recruiting for us fellas? And if so, how do we get in contact with you?
Okay, no, it's a good question in that side of things. I'm still recruiting, probably mostly from my stage 1 online survey. And if anybody goes, oh, how long is it? Because everybody usually says, the survey will only take you 5 minutes. My survey, because I actually get an estimate average of how long it takes. It takes around about 15 to 30 minutes to complete my survey from beginning to end. That's the name being put in there and completing the questions on average. So my survey is probably the area where I'm still recruiting. I'd like to try and increase that as much as possible. As I say, it can be done on the desktop, it can be done on the phone. It's user-friendly. I've tried it, and I've also had other people try it. So if people want to do that, they certainly can. Now, if they really want to participate in this, they could email me to get those details. I'm also on Twitter as well, if people want to do that. So my email address is grc912, and that's at student.beham.ac.uk. And if people want to follow me on Twitter and just do a direct message to me, I'm actually classed as hashtag or at nurse ever after. In that side of things, there is a story behind that handle. I didn't think I'd actually use that, but it has formed into my blog as well.
Yeah.
which is called, and I actually do have a website called PhD Ever After. So again, that will contain all my contact details as well. And a fourth way of finding out my details, if you're in any doubt, is Google UOB Garry Cooper-Stanton, and it should come up. And that refers to the University of Birmingham when I say UOB.
Wonderful.
So there are 4 ways, as I say, as an example. And again, I think there might be some details on your site about me, but I wouldn't want to say that.
No, there absolutely is. And I was going to mention that in a second. So please do get in contact with Garry. I have to say, he is a charming individual, and not just that, he's pioneering and shouting on behalf of us men with lymphedema for the greater good as part of the PhD. And not only that, Garry, as you will see on the website on Meet the Experts, shares his fascinating research and the process. And if you log in and click on the articles and blogs, you can see the latest information from Garry, and he has promised to keep us posted with any new material in the coming months and years as this research progresses. So as I said, pop on to Meet the Experts, and Garry's face is there, and click on that and you'll go through to his individual profile page with the story. But it's been fascinating. So just a last one from me, if I may. What is your ultimate aim for this research? What are you looking to achieve for men with lymphedema?
Definitely in that side of things. My side of things is I want the voice and story of men diagnosed with lymphedema to be more widely shared, more widely understood, and what I'd love that to be turned into, and again, this research can lead into it, how we support men differently with a condition and more appropriately. It may mean that what we're doing is just looking at this very differently from the way that we offer to women, in different ways that men would engage. And that's really what I want. I want us to acknowledge that men with this condition will look at it very differently, and the way they engage with it will be differently. And that, I'm saying that because that's based on what some of the findings I've had already. So that's my intention. Share, understand, collaborate with men, and offer better support.
A perfect ending to the interview, and nothing else needs to be said, Garry, apart from a huge thank you for your time. I know how busy you are. It's been fabulous, welcoming you onto our series of videos and the website and the golf day, and I hope we'll be collaborating on many more projects in the future. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you too for inviting me to this and sharing it. So I look forward to speaking to more people and getting more involved in the future. So thank you again.
My pleasure. So listen up, guys. Go onto the website. Garry's email's there, and sign up and help him with this survey. You're doing it for the greater good. Thanks very much for watching, and look out for the next one very soon. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.